Overrated, underrated. For Jim's favorite game, although it flip-flops from year to year to this and Star Fox. Streets of Rage 2, Jim. And you are going to be overrated for this game because we know you're not a true fan of it and that I'm better at it than you. So let's hear how Streets of Rage 2 is overrated.
Here's the thing. Have you played Streets of Rage 2 even once?
Yes, many times.
Do you ever need to go back to it more than once? You play it once, you've played the game. Like, sure, some can consider it fun. And even I on occasion will say, that's a pretty good game. But is there ever really a reason to be like, oh, I'm going to find something new out of this very straightforward and someone could say lazily done improvement? Now, sure, they revamped everything, but did they really change anything up that much besides giving you maybe one more special move, maybe giving you one more character? At the end of the day, it's still just, they took Final Fight once again and just made it look even more like Final Fight this time. Really, it's not like they innovated. Sure, anyone can make a fun game, and it is a fun game. And some could say it's one of the best of the genre. But is that even that good of a genre? It's kind of like a genre for dummies. Let's put it that way. Because you just need, I got my one button, walk to the right, punch, 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 walk to the right, punch, 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 punch. Eventually you need a little more meat on your bones, bruh. You need to really simulate yourself more. And there's plenty of other smaller games out there. Like, you want to waste your time with the game, you'll play the same thing over again. At least play maybe something like Rocket League, where you're playing human players who will always make
You
it.
need to stop right there, because you suck at that fucking game. And if you don't
I am fantastic at that game.
If you don't stop blowing that game.
Fine. Maybe you can play something like Tetris 99, where the result will always be
Another
something
game
different.
where you can't even come in first.
I got the second. It's very hard to get in first.
You know what's not first? Second. And that's where you keep ending up. Just like on here.
If you're not first, you're last.
Exactly.
Ricky Bobby.
Basically. So go on. Keep telling me why you hate Streets of Rage 2.
And like you said, if it was on any other system, imagine that soundtrack but coming through a system that isn't a pain in the ass to produce music for.
You mean like a better system?
Just other systems.
But
other systems with easier to produce sound.
like Super NES with a better system?
Well, it has easier to produce sound, obviously.
Okay, so yeah,
yeah.
Super NES better system.
No, we're not saying that. But
That sounds like what you're saying to me.
it just comes down to the fact that everyone out there is always like, it's definitely a lot of nostalgia, too. Like, do you think kids these days care about Streets of Rage 2? Is it really that timeless if future generations can't go back to it? Say a game like River Raid. You give River Raid to a baby, they can have fun with it because it's simple enough, it's accessible enough. But if you give a 7-year-old these days a game like Streets of Rage 2, are they really going to care? No, they're going to put it down and go back to Fortnite. So, how timeless really can a game like that be?
So, you're right. It is overrated.
See, I win. I win.
So,
Wow, I turned both of these around.
So-
Oh boy.
all right, Jim. So, I hear your comments, and I knew deep down you always did hate this game because how you're never better than me at it. So, I might as well point out it's the best fighting game on the Sega Genesis. And we've established on this channel, Sega Genesis is basically a sports game system that has a few other genres, but it's what it does best.
I mean, it's got every genre on it. It's got every genre.
I didn't interrupt you, so yeah. How about you be goddamn civil?
There, I guess we're in the court of law here.
So
You interrupted me when I said Rocket League, goddamn it.
yeah, because I deserved an interruption.
Objection.
So it's the best fighting game on the system. And to your
Beat 'em up, not a fighting game.
You're correct. Beat 'em up. And some could argue, and I may throw an argument out there for various reasons, it could be the best beat 'em up of the 16-bit era over the Super NES games. Super NES games in general, they flow a little better for beat 'em ups. But this one happens to be just the full package. Because as we've established also on this channel, the one thing that makes a game more timeless, and you can forget about control, gameplay you can kind of play around with, but if you have a soundtrack that is memorable, excuse me, if you have a soundtrack that is memorable, and once again, I'm going to go out on a limb here, if it's not the best soundtrack on the Sega Genesis, it's within the top 3. Maybe you could throw one of the Sonics in there, and I'm sure there's a whole other litany of games, but there's no doubt this has probably the best soundtrack, track for track on that system. And that's saying something for a system that doesn't have a lot of games with great soundtracks. So what I'm trying to say is you take a game with the most underrated soundtrack from a system that didn't produce always those great soundtracks. This really competed with the Super NES on that. And it made it, just from that alone, timeless. Because people had to remake the game and do remixes. And we've even done videos on the top 10, or was it 20 soundtracks.
I think it was 10 from the overall series.
Top 10 from the overall series. And 8 of them were from Streets of Rage 2. If not 9. I can't remember the exact number.
7 or 8 of them.
So this was also the pinnacle of that series. 1, it was good. Had some flaws. Way too hard in some spots. Characters were meh. 3, just bullshit. You can throw that out. But 2, you had the perfect cast. And, you had your favorite girl, Blaze. And I had Max. Because that's who I'm best with. And that's who I could always do better than you as. So you put all these factors together. And you really want to point out a game that makes a Genesis. If you ever tried to make that argument, that Genesis is better than Super NES, this is going to be in that top 5 list of games you got to point out and say, look what we got. So when you have a game that's the pinnacle of everything that Super Genesis could do at the time, from a graphics, from a sound, from a control, and shit, I'll even throw this in there for your precious little system. This is one of those few games that could deal with this shitty 3-button controller to the Genesis, because you didn't need more buttons, so you didn't have to go out and spend more money on a controller. You could just play it stock. So for all those reasons, I win again.
Now that that's done, I win the impossible to lose argument.
Jim, you have yet to win an Overrated, Underrated, and I win.
No, I'm going to say I won this one.
I'm
pretty sure I won. I'm pretty sure our army of Super NES fans that follow this goddamn page in spite of me will happily agree with me. And if not, you're all fucking hypocrites. Every last one of you.
Jim, we've seen what people want from the People's Champ. People have been cheering me on in some of these things. It's undeniable. There's blue meanies and then there's rocks. That's all I'm going to say. Fine, you can be your Kevin Owens if you want. Who's now just trying to be Stone Cold, and Jericho and all these people taking little bits from all of them.
Hey, he does a nice stunner. What can I say?
He's never done a stunner like Stone Cold did to Scott Hall. Until you do that.
Well, you need to have a Scott Hall to sell it for you like that.
Well, this whole brand right now is nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
So, let us know what you think. Obviously, we both love the shit out of the game, but if you are someone out there who does legitimately feel Streets of Rage 2 is overrated,
love to hear it.
I would love to hear it. And I think for the points you were trying to make, I'm trying to think if any of them were actually legit.
I love when you do your counter arguments to anything I do. You always have to get your little digs in there. It's always with some fucking digs. When you say, because it's always a backhanded kind of thing, and you know what the fuck you do.
Oh, I know.
When you're just like, when it's the best game on a shitty system, I'm just sitting here just like,
why do you think I'm
I debates? I know.
No, one thing you did say, and it is honest, the game is fun as hell, but honestly, we've established this. There is no reason to go back to play other than
just how fun it is.
Yeah, it's like you do play it once, you're like, okay,
right,
I got it. And
if you're not a beat 'em ups fan and you play it it's the best one to play, but even then you'd be like, oh, okay, I did this.
I will say, and I do believe it, not to piss you off, but I do feel that beat 'em ups tend to be smoother, and I like the way they control on Super NES.
Wrong.
Because a lot of times you have more abilities on those games because of the controller. Like, you have more grapple abilities. You have a few more things that are better. And I'm someone, I've said with you, I love Streets of Rage. That's still my favorite beat 'em up of the era. But it's that game. It's not. I'm not going all the beat 'em ups on the Genesis and saying I love them.
Right.
I'm saying specifically this one. So yeah, I would love, other than, unless you just have a general hate of
And I mean,
Genesis,
there's really bad, obviously, beat 'em ups on the Genesis. Like you have like EX Mutants or X Mutants, whatever you call that, and fucking.
No, there's plenty of other good. I mean, there are a few other, like the Batman one is okay.
Batman and Robin's great. You have Battletoads Double Dragon. You have shit like that, and a lot of them are also on the Super NES, maybe slightly different. So
yeah, so
is what it is.
I would love to hear though, legit. If you guys do have something, let us know.